When you start in a company, the odds of failure are so freaking high. I think it's like 99% chance that you fail. And yet you still wake up every morning and continue to do that. So actually, it's kind of like a crazy thing, right? You're still like, I'm still gonna do this even though I know it's gonna fail. But you do that because you have some conviction in what you're doing. And in order to get that conviction myself, I needed to speak with enough people to actually understand that this can be big enough and important enough to someone today. So I'm not an early adopter of tech. I think maybe the only new tech that I adopted is I was an early Lyft and Uber rider. But I still have an iPhone 6, I think, which my team is very unhappy with. But I'm not an early adopter of tech. And so, it was important to me to get conviction for myself that there is a real problem here. I'm not the only person who's struggling with this, and that the market is big enough and that it exists today.
Hey everybody, this is Brendan Dell, and welcome to another episode of Billion Dollar Tech. I am your host. For those new to this channel, to this show, I am the founder of the Go-to-Market Accelerator, which is an early stage accelerator for B2B SaaS brands. We help them achieve go-to-market fit. I am also the founder of B2H, which is an agency that works with enterprise brands, helping them create breakthrough creative, as well as the host of this show. And today we're talking with Bar Moses. Bar is the founder and CEO of Monte Carlo, a company that raised their Series D last year, putting them at a $1.6 billion valuation. And today we're talking with her about her journey, how she identified this unique niche. She was incredibly entertaining, incredibly bright. I very much enjoyed this conversation. If you are someone who's trying to understand, where should you invest your time? What's it going to take to grow the business? How do you accelerate your path to success? This is all the things we cover in this episode. A quick request for you out there listening. We're seeing the numbers go up here at the show every week. So thank you for tuning in. However, I would like to hear from you. Who are you? Who are the people out there listening to this show? Email me, brendan@brendandell.com. Leave a review on iTunes. They're all appreciated. But leave a few words. What do you like? What could we do better? Hit me up on LinkedIn, Brendan Dell. Hit me up on Instagram, on Instagram, the Brendan Dell. Any of those places. We're on TikTok now. Leave a comment in the episode. Tell me, what do you like? Why are you tuning in? What can we do more of? What would you like to hear more of? This is going to help us create better content for you. It helps us understand how we can add more value to your life. We will listen to every single thing that we receive, and we will work to continue to improve the content. So without further ado, let's get into this conversation with Bar Moses. All right, cheers. Thanks for joining me.
Great to
I'm
be
excited
here.
for this conversation. So to kick things off, we've started this new little segment on the show called Rate My Pitch. Give people the 60-second value prop for Monte Carlo.
Sure. Remember that time you looked at a dashboard and the numbers looked wrong? You're like, why the fuck are the numbers wrong? That's what we saw. That's the end of the 60-second pitch.
Oh, that's good. Maybe that's the best one I've heard so far.
If you want to learn more, there's a lot of people behind that work hard to create data products. So data engineers, data analysts, machine learning engineers, and they create various data products. It could be a dashboard, it could be a machine learning model, and those are often wrong. And so we help them make sure that it's actually accurate and reliable. So you can kind of think of it as like Datadog or New Relic, but for data teams.
Cool.
Yeah.
So where'd you come up with the Monte Carlo name? Is that the simulation or is it the...
Yeah, great question. It's actually a funny story. So when we started the company, we did a lot of work before actually starting the company. By work, I mean talking to customers. So we talked to hundreds of people, potential customers, a lot of cold calling, and basically asked folks to tell us about their data problems, and came up with the concept. And then, I think when we got started, And I joined with my co-founder. I was like, okay, let's like go build the product. And my co-founder Lior was like, what are you talking about? We should go find a customer, like a real person that we can actually solve a problem for. And I was like, yeah, actually, that's a great idea. And so we started working with customers before we even had a product. And so we had, sorry?
Oh, I was saying, I love that. That's the way to go. Yeah. For sure. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, it's all good. So, and then when we did that, we basically, started working with folks and had to sign documents and basically had like 24 hours to come up with a name for the company to sign with. And so, I remember I was in my office and I studied math and stats. So I kind of pulled out my stats book and I was like, okay, let's go find something reasonable. And, the options were like Bayes' theorem, which is like not a great name. The other option was
Silicon Valley though. I don't know. Yeah.
It could work. Then it was Markov chains, which couldn't work. And finally landed on Monte Carlo, which is, Monte Carlo simulation. And so I was like, okay, I think we can work with that. So within 24 hours, just incorporated. And I always said, like, if anyone can come up with a better name, I'm all ears, but we couldn't come up with a better name since.
Honestly, I feel like names are like very overrated in the front. I don't know. Everybody like agonizes over that decision. At the end of the day, either describe the thing, like if you're going to user testing, right? That was a good name, right? For the platform, or just name it something and move on because you're just going to have to, show people what it does.
Totally.
So you guys have raised like 400 million ish in 4 rounds. Is that right?
236 in
236.
Yes.
Okay. Crunch. Oh, I've got a 4 typed in wrong here. 236 in 4 rounds. So Crunchbase isn't wrong. It's just that my typing is wrong.
That's okay.
So So that's a huge accomplishment, but there's a lot I'm sure that has happened between then and now. So I'd love to walk back to kind of the beginning and talk about, how do you get started? What was the aha moment for the company? Where did all this begin?
Yeah, for sure. So, I kind of talked about the problem that we're solving. So, I've been in data for the last like decade and a half, and I work with data a lot. And that thing that happened to me, and this was in 2016, I would just wake up every Monday morning and the data was wrong. And I would just get like WTF emails from my CEO, my boss, from our customers. And I was like, I had one job, which is get the data wrong. Why is that so freaking hard? Like get the data right. Why is that so freaking hard, right? And we ended up resorting to really manual ways of making sure that the data is accurate. Like we would, I remember going to a room with my team, like mapping out our entire data flow and figuring out like what went wrong and why. And I was like, why is this so manual and difficult to do? Is it like, am I crazy? Is the world crazy? Like what's going on? And, ended up speaking with like dozens of people in the industry and hearing the same pain from them. So everyone wanted to use data more for marketing campaigns, for decisions about, which customers to upsell, gleaning information about or learnings about the business, building more data products where customers actually use your data, receive reports on a regular basis, various ways to use data for various organizations. And no one actually had a systematic, scalable way to make sure that the data is accurate, which is really ironic because we've invested so much in making sure that, you have like the best infrastructure and the best data warehouse and the best BI and the best everything, but like the freaking thing is wrong all the time. So like, what are we doing here? And so I think, that was kind of like my personal experience with it. And then I decided, I was at Gainsight for several years. I was really honored to be part of creating the customer success category, which is a really cool experience. And then, left Gainsight and decided to start a company and actually started 3 companies in parallel. Because I was like, if I'm going to leave my cushy job and get other people to leave their cushy job, better be a good idea. And so actually kind of started 3 ideas in parallel. That was really helpful to see, like, what does a strong pull look like? So some of the ideas that I worked on, like no one would pick up the phone. Like I would just like, hey, do you have this problem? And they were just like, not even like, won't even spend a minute with me. But some of the ideas that I worked on, in particular, the idea of like data being wrong, I would get really strong reaction, kind of like, like you were like, it resonated with you, right? Like you got that. And so people would react really strongly. I think that was like maybe the first aha moment, or like people that I didn't even know would just say like, hell yes, I have that problem. Please help me solve that right now. I think that was like the very first light bulb.
That's cool. That's a good idea. Like, I mean, a good idea would be even to just like, okay, I'm going to write for, problem solution statements and then go on a cold calling campaign and pretend you've got the thing to fix it. Right. And then like see who picks up the phone. Cause that is I've seen so many over the last, especially the last like 18 months of just like, oh, this is like an okay, kind of a nice improvement over something, but like nobody really, just because there's been so much money out there and people are throwing so much at startups that it's like people are building all these like, oh, this is an okay product or a decent idea, but it's not really a painful thing. And you can kind of do that when markets are good, but like, right now nobody's buying anything that isn't really solving a big problem. That's a very interesting, way to go about really validating. Do you feel like, so it sounds like you had a personal pain, which is sometimes indicative of a broader pain, sometimes is not. But then you went out and validated it. Do you feel like that would be a valuable way for somebody else to go find a startup idea, is to go out and just like, okay, I think I'm from data or, insert whatever. I'm going to call a bunch of, 100 people in that category and be like, what are you most worried about? And see if they have some common trend.
Yeah. I mean, look, hindsight 2020, but I think talking to your customers and convincing yourself, right? Like that's the thing. When you start in a company, the odds of failure are so freaking high. I think it's like 99% chance that you fail. Yeah. And yet you still wake up every morning and continue to do that. So actually, it's kind of like a crazy thing, right? You're still like, I'm still going to do this, even though I know it's going to fail. But you do that because you have some conviction in what you're doing. And in order to get that conviction myself, I needed to speak with enough people to actually understand that this can be big enough and important enough to someone today. So I'm not an early adopter of tech. I think maybe the only new tech that I adopted is like, I was an early Lyft, an Uber rider, but like, I still have an iPhone 6, I think, which my team is very unhappy with. But like, I'm not an early adopter of tech. And so, it was important to me to get conviction for myself that like, there is a real problem here. I'm not the only person who's struggling with this, and that the market is big enough and that it exists today. And so I actually read this book. It's called The Mom Test, which basically speaks about getting conviction for your idea with people who pass the mom test. It's sort of a terrible name, but the concept is good. It basically says like, if you go to people who know you and love you and you're like, hey, I have this idea, they'll by definition say like, hey, wow, that's such a great idea. You're the best. You're amazing, because they know you and like you. So you have to find people who pass that test, people who don't owe you anything, who are not just going to be nice to you because they know you and like you, but because they actually have a real need. And so I seeked out those people. Like I literally would cold call people on LinkedIn, many of them, and ask like, hey, is this a problem for you or not? And use that as a measure to convince myself whether this is important enough. And so every week I would ask myself, okay, am I more bullish, less bullish, or same bullish based on what I've learned this week? And basically like built conviction over time based on speaking with real customers and getting a real understanding of their pain point. And by the way, that pain point, like 3.5 years later, hasn't changed. So, the number one reason why people work with Monte Carlo, one of the top reasons, is because like, hey, the CEO caught a huge mistake in the dashboard last week and I didn't even notice that. And like, we're using that report to report numbers to the street. Or, hey, like a customer called us because the data was wrong, or the CFO identified a problem. Like those are things that hit people hard. And so actually like convincing yourself of that real problem. Yeah, I think that was kind of table stakes to get conviction and to get us kicked off.
How confident were you that you could solve the problem? Like I heard the founder of CB Insights the other day talking on a podcast, and he was talking about how it's basically like, he pulls all this data off the internet to create, populate his platform. And he's basically, I think, has a bunch of people essentially in Excel still, because like they've tried to put machine learning and all these different things on top of it. And it doesn't end up giving you what you want. And so like the best way to do it is scrape the internet, dump into Excel, have humans do the work. So there's, how confident were you that you could create some automated way to do this? Or are you still, and you can sort of talk about whatever you're comfortable with, but, are you still like, it's like half tech, half humans doing the, making sure things are running correctly?
Yeah, great question. So, for us, we're 100% SaaS, right? So there's no like human in that sense.
Yeah.
Have I ever heard someone say my data is 100% accurate? Hell no. Do I ever think we're going to get to that point? I also don't think so. Like, realistically, I don't think that's true. Like by definition, data exists in various systems, platforms. Like it's not uncommon to have, multiple copies. And so I don't think that's what we're striving for. Like we're not looking for someone to say, hey, we have 100% confidence. We're looking for someone to say, hey, this data is important enough for us to invest something in making sure that it's accurate. And like treating this issue with the diligence that it deserves. Like think about application reliability. I think that's maybe the best corollary. Like a couple of decades ago, nobody cared if your app was up or down. Like literally, like who gives a shit, right? But like then Netflix is down for 45 minutes in 2016 because of duplicate data. And you're like, yeah, Netflix being down for 45 minutes is like a hell of a problem, right?
Now it'd be like 45 seconds would be a hell of a problem.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah. 4 seconds is a hell of a problem today, right? Seriously. And so, maybe 5 years ago it was fine that your data was a little bit wrong. You weren't really using it. There was like one person looking at your data. But today, like if the data is wrong on your website for a couple of minutes, that's actually a pretty poor customer experience. And, even an hour of data downtime can cost you millions of dollars. And I think that problem is only going to get worse over time because data is going to become more and more important to organizations. Like I actually think data reliability is going to be way more important than infrastructure reliability and bigger because it really is feeding applications. Like applications are running on data today more and more. So I think, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought, please.
Okay. So I think, going back to your question, like how do we solve this or do we solve it? I think, we're not striving for 100%. We're striving to like increased diligence on a real problem that's becoming more and more important. The other thing that I think that's interesting in our journey is when we started it, maybe this is kind of at the root of your question, when we started the journey, people were like, hey, my data is so different than someone else's data. There's no way you can solve this because like we're Snowflake and we're so different than anyone else. And, I think a lot of our team has experience both in engineering and in security. And in both of those worlds, like the concepts of DevOps and infrastructure reliability and SecOps and DevOps, super well understood. And while my system is different than yours, there's still a coherent framework that everyone uses in order to make sure that infrastructure and applications are reliable. And so we were like, why can't we find something like that for data? There should be a coherent set that is applied to everyone. And so that's what we did. Following all those conversations with those people, we took the lessons from everyone around like, why is their data wrong and how are they solving it? And we came up with this framework that actually is consistent across people. And I think that was the second big aha moment. Like, even though your data is different than mine and different than someone else, there is actually commonalities and patterns to why data goes wrong. And therefore there's commonalities to how we can solve that. So we can actually like make a meaningful impact on the reliability and trust of your data by introducing automation and framework and process around it.
So rewinding just a little bit to kind of back to the 0 to 1 days. So you came out of Gainsight, and I'd like to talk about that journey. We can table that for a minute, but you come out of Gainsight, you have this idea, you parallel these 4 ideas, you feel like you've got some traction maybe in this one direction. You have a co-founder there. Did you two know each other previously, you and your co-founder?
Yes, we're actually married.
Oh, wow.
Leo and I.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we knew each other for a little
rather
bit.
well. How's that? Is that hard? Like working with your spouse all the time to that degree?
It's actually awesome. So
Nice.
Before I started the company, I actually did something that's kind of like meeting various co-founders and, figuring out who you want to work with. And I think I realized the thing that's like there are a couple of things that were really important to me in a co-founder. One is like being aligned on the values and what kind of company we want to build. You know, we were pretty clear, like we want to build a new category, which is pretty freaking hard. Right? It's like we're building a new product that's never been built before. We're selling a product that's never been sold before and working with customers to adopt tech that's never been adopted before. So you kind of have to like do that with intention if you actually want to do that. And, you know, we wanted to create a company where we can be proud of the journey and proud of what we're doing. And then the second thing that was really important to me in a co-founder is someone who puts customer impact first. It's actually our first value as a company. You know, and thinking about measuring ourselves, like our success is our customer success. And so I met with a couple of folks, actually folks who I've met with who were sort of potential customers. And they were like, hey, like, why aren't you working with Lior, your husband? He has like the perfect background. I was like, I don't know if that will work. And so long story short, we like tried it out and actually like, you know, I think the working together has been awesome. Like the highs are higher and the lows are not as low when we do it together.
That's nice. I feel like that's the kind of thing that either goes really right or really wrong, you know, and you probably, so yeah, I don't think I could. I think I'm too difficult to work with to do that with my wife. So you guys get this idea and you're like, okay, let's go get a customer. So talk about that process. You know, how did you go about getting a customer, and did you raise money at that point? Did you build out an MVP first? You know, how did you get the sort of start to push the snowball up the hill?
Yeah, for sure. So we did a lot of the kind of like market validation or customer validation work up front. So that was before raising any money. That was just me. And I was kind of like, as I mentioned, you know, trying out several ideas in parallel. And that included...
Had you quit your job already at that point? Okay. So you said, I'm going to start something. I'm not sure what, but I'm not going to work for the man anymore. So
so I quit my job, and first I took some time off. I took a couple months off. I went on a silent meditation retreat for 7 days. That was really hard. Nice. I like can't shut up for 15 minutes. I don't know how I survived 7 days.
I've always wanted to do that. And I just like, now I've got 2 little kids and I think it's going to be a while, but yeah, one of these days I'll give it a shot.
I recommend actually, like, I think it was a great experience. I kind of like became friends with myself, if that makes sense. Like it was nice. I recommend. And so I did that. I also like watched Netflix for like a week straight, which by the way was not socially acceptable at the time. I think today post COVID, it's a lot more okay to do that. Was not okay to do that back then. So that was fun, you know, and kind of just like took time off to decompress, and actually spoke to like 50 or so founders in a month to kind of learn about people's journeys. And, you know, it was all in B2B SaaS. That's really kind of the area that I'm most interested in. And after speaking to everyone, I was like, okay, I really want to start something of my own. Why don't I work on an idea?
Were they all winners? The 50, like, are they people all like, did you index on 50 people who had success, or did you mix in there like, you know, this hit big, this kind of like carried on for 5 years and just failed slowly, and this failed quickly and spectacularly in your conversations?
That's a good question. I mean, I think you get a good mix when you talk to like 50 people. I think a lot of them were like early stage, like seed, Series A, Series B. So, you know, like I really wanted to do something early, like building. And so seeing, you know, kind of like 1 or 2 steps ahead was really helpful. Like to hear stories, like how do they come up with the idea? What does it take? How long does it take? I was like, what are the shortcuts? Can someone tell me the shortcut? Like what's the hack? And actually like it was pretty reassuring, because I learned that like there's no hacks. It's just freaking hard work all the way. Like all the way to $1 billion in revenue. It's just hard work. And I was like, okay, hard work. Like we can do that. And I thought that was actually like really inspiring.
Did you ever think about buying something? Like it's, you know, to me, the only shortcut, like somewhat of a shortcut you can get is you can go buy something with some revenue that somebody, just for whatever the reasons are, they couldn't scale it, you know, or they scaled it X and really can't get to Y, or, you know, or don't care to, because like you said, a lot of it is not brain surgery. It's just freaking hard work. So like, yeah. Do you ever think about that? I'm always curious when people start companies, because it's such a different journey.
Yeah, totally. I mean, look, I think M&A is a very valid option. I think in the early days, when you're considering doing an M&A of startups, a lot of times it's actually an acqui-hire. So you're really kind of working with the team itself. So I'm not sure I'm not sure that it's quite like, it's not, there's no like free lunch in that sense. Like there is the work of like integrating the product or integrating the team. I think it can definitely accelerate you, and it's something to consider. But I'm not sure if it's quite the hack. I think there's a lot of work
more just
involved.
like, don't start your own idea at all. You find some baseline business and you just say, okay, this is a pretty good idea, but they're just not doing that great of a job with it. And I think I can build the brand and build the team and scale it up that way, this kind of a thing. Yeah.
I see.
Or is it the innovation that really gets you like excited? And that's the part that really, it's really the making something new that gets you excited.
It's a really good question. I did have a couple of those opportunities and just ended up saying, like probably rather I'd rather create my own problems and then solve them. I think that was kind of what I was thinking. I was also really drawn to this problem. I think the idea of having this kind of impact with something that I think is so like, I really do believe in the power of data. And I can't imagine data not being important. And I think that drives me in my day to day. And so being able to like really help people and wake up in the morning and know that there's like a customer on the other end who's able to like ship vaccines or, like get you on your flight home or whatever it is that you're doing with data. Like that's like an important part of my own story and sort of like what gave me and still gives me a lot of my motivation.
Well, and you come from, if you've worked in data for the past 10 or 15 years, I mean, that puts you in a pretty unique position to have whatever amount of advantage a person can come into a startup with, right? You understand the landscape. You probably have a decent network. You can probably get people on the phone easier than, if somebody just like randomly has this idea and so forth. So all good reasons to index on something like this. So once you guys started building this thing out, getting a few customers, did you then decide to go out and raise? Did you ever consider just bootstrapping it all the way, or did you always plan to raise money on the idea?
Yeah, so there are there's like 2 or 3 reasons why. I think, first of all, in creating a new category, it does require capital. Like that is, you're literally like creating something from nothing. So, it's kind of crazy. I just, just this week we, like we not too long ago, we wrote a book about this topic, and like, it's actually a category. Like it's a category in G2. We won like 14 awards this quarter. Like it's kind of magical to me. I'm like, holy shit, crazy. It's a category, And I just a couple of years ago, people were like, this is never going to work. You're throwing your career away. And I'm like, whoa, this is a thing, So, and I think also in order to do that, I think there's obviously capital helps you. I think for us, like, we really believe in how big this category can be. If you look at like the biggest sectors in software, it's infrastructure. And then the next biggest software is actually APM. Like Datadog is becoming one of the most iconic companies of the decade. And if you believe that's true in data, infrastructure is biggest. And we think reliability for data is going to be the next biggest. And so, it was always important to us to go for the opportunity. We think there's a huge company to be built here. We want to be the people to do that. And so, to have like strong partners along the way, in our investors and obviously in the capital that they provide, that helps, right? It helps create that. And obviously like the brand behind that, it's helpful for recognition with your first customers, with your first employees, all that helps you. It's basically like, success compounds. And so if you can get great people on board who believe in your mission, who actually believe in what you're doing. By the way, our first like board member and investor, he was part of the journey of actually like creating the company. I met with him actually before I even created the company. And so, building relationships with people who believe in what you're doing, follow along. I think that's an awesome opportunity.
Everybody, before we go any further, I did want to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Riverside.fm. So Riverside is the leading podcast and video recording platform, and it is quite literally the platform I was using before they became a sponsor of this show. I used to use Zoom, and then I was interviewed on the Riverside platform. And after experiencing the quality of the recording and the quality of the experience, I knew that I had to switch. Recently saw on their website that today the platform is used by more than 70,000 people, ranging from folks like Guy Raz and Gary Vee and companies like Spotify and the New York Times. One of the things that I've been really excited about the platform lately is all the new updates that they're adding. They are recently rolled out a new feature called Clips that allows you to quickly pull out bite-sized pieces of your show and publish them to social media. That's something my team absolutely loves. Another thing that they recently rolled out is an integration with Spotify, which makes it even more seamless to publish your shows. That's another thing that saves the team tons of time. Since I know that many of you out there are creators, I talked with the folks at Riverside and they agreed to give you all a discount on the platform if you'd like to give it a try. So just go to riverside.fm and use the code Brendan30, Brendan30, and that'll get you 30% off on an annual membership. And now right back to the episode. When you look at the trajectory of the company, like how do you try to de-risk the growth of something like this? Are you looking out and saying like, okay, here's what I think, because as you said, 99% of companies fail. Creating a category probably ups that percentage by, a small amount. You guys have de-risked a lot of this at this point, but how did you think about that early stage to say, because it's such an audacious idea and it's one of those things too that, everybody's like, silly, cousin is like, I'm going to create a new category about this, and you're like, oh, okay, that's not going to work. But then, so how did you think about like, first of all, I guess overcoming the negativity from people around you who are saying you're throwing your career away. And then second of all, trying to look at the problem and de-risk it along the way so that you could get to where you are right now.
Yeah, for sure. So a couple of things. One, it's actually in our values. So I mentioned our first value is customer impact. Our fourth or third value is beat the odds. And that speaks to that. Like actually another book that I read right before starting the company is called Daring Greatly. And there's this great quote about like the man in the arena and, showing up and, sort of fighting in the arena. And like it's that effort that counts. And so for us, beat the odds means like trying to do and accomplish as a team things that might seem impossible and basically things that like might seem like 99% chance to fail. And like if we haven't failed or if we haven't heard no, like we haven't tried enough. So I think there's something about like doing that. And there's another great quote about like the unreasonable man creates progress, right? Just reading that earlier today. Like it is about doing unreasonable things that help move us forward. So that's like, it's part of the company's DNA. It's part of our values. And then I think the second important thing to remember and remind yourself is that customers just don't give a shit about you creating a category or not. Like it's literally, they don't care. They're not like, oh, it's a new category, I'm going to go work with you. It's like, are you solving a real problem for me? And so focusing it, so in remembering that you're creating the category, but really what you're doing is helping people and solving their problem is way more important. And so the category creation efforts are around how do we articulate the pain that our customers have? How do we relate to that? How do we empathize with them? And then how do we actually solve their problems? That's what category creation about. It's not about like my great idea going out there and talking about it. It's actually like customer by customer, helping them solve it. They are creating the category with us. Like they're the real pioneers of this category, not us. And I think remembering that also as a founder, like helps me remember that like they know the answer. So I don't necessarily know what's right. They definitely do, our customers, and listening to that throughout the way as you are able to like solve more of these problems for your customers, you also de-risk yourself.
Have there been particular, you found like as you've grown, inflection points in the business where you're like, okay, we went, 0 to, let's call it like product market fit, something like we have some people using this thing and they're consistently getting some value from the thing. And then, okay, now we've got some people using the thing. Now we need to figure out what's the go-to-market that we can start to scale to tell more people about this and get, what are some of those inflection points that you found along the journey so far? And, any like lessons that you would pass on to others as they walk the path? Because I think there's there's this idea, and you've already kind of articulated a little bit, that you figure out product market fit, and then you spend some money on ads, and things just start to flow, and then that's the hockey stick happens, right? And I've never seen it like that. So yeah, have you seen the inflection points in your business, and what did you learn at those stages?
Yeah, totally. So, I think there's the way that I've always thought about this is we kind of have two company goals. That's only two company goals for now and forever. The first is get as many customers as possible. The second is make customers as happy as possible. That's it. And so I've always thought about milestones as like part of that journey. So the first step is make one customer happy. Can we do that? Can we get one customer to say like, hell yeah, I need Monte Carlo, right? And I will never forget our first customer saying, I use only 3 tabs: Gmail, BigQuery, and Monte Carlo. And I was like,
nice.
If we can be top 3 for our customers, like that's a hell yeah moment, right? Actually, in the early days, we had, when you have like a small number of customers, it's actually hard to measure how you're doing. And so we actually counted something called hell yeah moments in the product, which is basically like when we show the product or had customers use the product and they would like jump off their chair with excitement. You could literally see it. We would like rank 0 to 10, like how high did they jump? Like a 10 jump out of their chair, or like a 3. And we would count those moments and like lean into that. So like, how many hell yeah moments did we get today from our customers? What does that tell us about where we should go? And so, I think the first milestone is like make one customer happy. And then the second milestone is make 10 customers happy. Like, can you do that? And then can you make 100 customer? And then can you make 1,000 customer? And I think it's like bit by bit, customer by customer, like make that happen. And obviously like, what it takes to make 1, 10, 100, 1,000 is a different skill set and different focus. But those are always sort of the milestones for me along the way. And I think whenever we did something right, it's because we listened to the customer. So that's kind of like one big thing that's important to me. The second big lesson for me, or kind of like my second big area, is something that I call speed and focus. Actually, my staff meeting is called Speed and Focus. So like bi-weekly meeting called Speed and Focus. And the idea is like, how do we help our team and as an organization, how do we continue to stay extremely focused on what matters and to move quickly and preserve that as you grow? There's kind of like a temptation as you grow from like one person. When you're like 5 people, you can like do it all yourself. And then suddenly you're 50 people and then like 500. There's this temptation to slow down. And like, if something took you a day, now it takes you like 3 weeks. Like if before it took you like, half an hour to like write a blog and publish it. And now you need like 500 people to look at it and like 300 days to release a blog post. And like you're slowing down as a company. And that's true for anything, right? Like whatever, if you're building or writing an email or closing a deal. And so how do you like actually keep up that urgency? I think for startups, like the biggest advantage you have is time. So like lean into that and move with that urgency and don't lose that as you grow.
How do you keep the urgency? What have you done?
Great question. I'm still on that quest. So if anyone has advice for me, I'm all ears. But it's the one thing that I'm obsessed about. So I mentioned like speed and focus. I think about that all the time. Like, my staff meetings are called that way. Someone on my team actually created like a little sticker that says, how can I move faster today? And like put that on their laptop. I probably need a sticker like that too. But I think it is that. It's like waking up every day and asking yourself, how can I move faster today? And if I move fast, how do I get my team to move fast too? And how do they get their teams to move faster? I think it's really about that.
Do people ever move too fast in response to that ask? Do you find you're like, you guys shipped this? Like what, is that a problem? And how have you, if it's been a problem, have you worked to mitigate that part? Because it's this balance, right? And I don't have a good answer for this, so I'm hoping you do. Because I've had, it's hard to get people to maintain the urgency while also having that presence to be like, no, this needs a little more time. We need to be a little thoughtful here. Let's not just kick it out the door because, we're like, we need to go faster, this kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's an important balance to strike. We actually codified all of this in our values. So our second value is called measure in minutes, which is probably like the most controversial of our values. And it basically speaks to like our measure of success is not like years or weeks. It's literally minutes. And it's so like every minute that you're spending on something should be high value. Cause like the minute you could be, when you're in a startup, you could literally be working on 100 different things that are broken at any given time, 100 different things. But I can only really fix one or two of them. So I better be really thoughtful about what those one or two things are and fix them really quickly. Now, when I say do things, move with speed and focus, it doesn't mean ship bad work. It doesn't mean do high, low quality or anything illegal. Not at all. It's not even close to that. It also doesn't mean like overwork yourself to ship it faster. That's not the point at all. It actually speaks to like de-scoping and choosing to do less things, but doing them better. And the idea that like you can't do 100 things really well. So you choose one thing, but you make a really good bet on what that one thing is. And you do that really well. And you just focused on that. So actually like your advantage is focus. You can't do those 100 things. Just, you have to choose wisely. Someone told me like, as long as you choose 51% of the time, the right thing, that's fine. Okay, so 51% of the time we have to be right in the bets that we're making. And we might be wrong in the bets, but like make that bet and try to solve it fast enough so that if you're wrong, you can course correct. I think a lot about like irreversible versus reversible decisions. It's really rare that we make irreversible decisions. So it's like the company's way better off if someone makes a decision, goes forward, ships it. We can always reverse it if we need, but definitely by no means like, low quality work is not tolerated. It's not it's not option. The option is more focus.
Yeah. Of all the, I've done tons of these interviews at this point, and the thing that emerges as the thing that doesn't always kill companies, but it either kills companies or it really slows people down is that lack of focus that they start to pursue. That's like probably the biggest thing I've heard again and again, that they try to pursue too many things at the same time. They can't figure out, whether it's product, whether it's go to market, whether, whatever the area of the business is, and they end up just spread too thin. And that's where I think the overworking really starts to happen, because it's like, okay, let me do 50 things at a 5% level, but look how busy I am and look how, much is happening. And I think sometimes leadership uses the busyness as a proxiness for value, especially in later stage companies when you're like post-founder and this stuff starts to happen. Anyhow, so what's been the most difficult challenge you've had to overcome so far building this company? So you came out of a leadership role at Gainsight. You had some experience running teams and running functions and so forth. Has there been anything, that has been particularly difficult in this path?
Yeah, I mean, look, starting a company, everything is freaking hard. Like you don't get anything for free. Like your first money is really hard. Your first customer is really hard. Your first employee is really hard. Like literally there's nothing that you're like, oh, that was easy. I wish that just doesn't happen. Yeah. And so, your definition of hard changes, right? And I think that's the same as you grow. Like you still have really hard problems to solve. I hope that never changes. One of the things that I like to say is we earn the right to solve problems. Like it's actually a great sign that there's difficult things. Like difficult things for us to do means that we're making progress and we now have a new set of challenges to solve. So I actually like get excited when there's like more hard things to solve. It's great news.
You've got founder DNA for sure.
Like a masochistic kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
But I love it. Seriously, I think it's like the most fun ever. Maybe the thing that's like the hardest for me is exactly what you were saying before, is like focus. I have a natural tendency to want to like fix everything, do everything. I'm like, yes to it all. But I have to force myself to say like, no, like what's the one thing that I'm going to do? Because if I'm not setting an example, then it's really hard for anyone else to focus. But I learned so much from my team on focus. Actually, like, our team is really good at telling me like, nope, that's actually like priority number 100 for us right now. So we're not doing that. And so I love hearing that. So when my team is like faster and focused than me, it's such a great win. So I think we hold each other accountable to that. But that's probably the thing that's the hardest and I think is a daily struggle.
So you seem like a really upbeat, positive, like energetic person. What gets you down in building this? Is there anything that reduces the energy or makes you feel like, oh man, can we do this? Is this going to work the way I think?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. Like, I feel like I was sort of wrong all along the way. Like, even like our first product, I was like, there's no way that's going to work. Like, who's going to, or I was really sure that something that we released, something called dashboards. I was like, this is going to be such a hit. And like, literally nobody used it like for like 3.5 years. So I feel like almost all of kind of my gut instincts in that way is wrong, which again is teaching me the lesson that customers, like the answer is in our customers, and our customers know what's best. And I can like hypothesize all day, but at the end of the day, like our customers are where the truth is. I personally get energy from people. So, like for the last couple of years being on Slack and like laughing with my team every day gives me a ton of energy, or like getting on a call with our customers gives me a lot of energy. Are they like, are there tough days or like low points? Yes, 100%. But I think if we use those to get learnings and to improve ourselves, like that's part of the deal. Like it's part of the journey. And actually, it's also part of our value. So our last value, it's called have fun. And part of that value says like we stay positive even when things are hard, and we win as a team. And that is really important to me. Like even when things suck and you feel like everything is on fire, we have this meme that's like everything is on fire. Like, yeah, still staying positive. Like it's actually part of our DNA. And, like life is short. So, we better work on stuff that we enjoy. Otherwise, like, I'm not sure what we're doing here.
Love it. So how do you, finding great people, right? That's probably the most, if you ask other thing that emerges when I'm like, what's the most important thing for you? It's always finding great people, build a great team. Everybody says that. What's a sort of non-obvious piece of advice that you have for founders in terms of finding great people, identifying them, and building a great team?
That is a great question. And yes, it is super important. Non-obvious advice. So actually a lot of the people that we hired in the early days actually found us because of the kind of like mini brand that we established. So I actually spent a lot of time creating content and working on category creation. I mean, category creation is kind of like, it's critical to our existence as a company. So I've spent a lot of time on that from day one. So actually people found us because of that. Like we had a lot of content online. They're like, oh, we read your content. And so they actually we got a lot of folks coming inbound. So there's content
That's
out
cool.
there about the problem that we're working on. So, I think that's like one thing that has helped us early on, both bringing customers, but also employees and hiring great people who like cared about the problem that we're working. Because I think in the early days, like it is so kind of like abstract what you're working on. Like maybe there's a customer, but maybe no, maybe there's no revenue. Maybe there's a little bit of revenue. So you really need you need people who get what you're doing and get the pain that you're doing. And so the more you can be articulate about it and articulate about what you're trying to solve, people can get excited about your mission, what you're trying to do. In the interview process, what I like to, maybe my favorite thing that I like to ask is when you wake up in the morning, what's the one thing that you're like, oh, I'm so excited to do this. Like, hell yes, I'm like so in. And then what's the thing that you're like, I totally don't want to do it. I'd rather do anything else but that thing. Like everyone has something that they like hate to do. And so I think people gravitate to doing the things that they like doing. And so if I can understand what they like doing and match between that and what the company needs, then there's magic. But like, I can't force someone to do something that they don't want to do. They're just never going to do that thing. So just understanding that early on and then finding that match, that's like when it becomes magical.
Talk about category creation for a second. That's something that, especially the last few years, I feel like people have talked more and more about that. And especially people are trying to create categories. This is something I run into a lot. When there's no category to be created, it's like they, have a slightly different version of a CRM. And they're like, maybe I should make a whole new category around this. And it's not going to work. What's your experience been with that? And what have you found to be successful in helping to build that? Because obviously when you can do it and it works, a lot of big winners come because they can carve out that uniqueness in space.
Great question. Category creation is, super interesting topic. I think I'll start by saying there's folks that we learn from, right? So like whether it's Datadog and App Dynamics and New Relic in the early days and PagerDuty as well. Obviously my time at Gainsight has taught me a lot about category creation. I think there's a couple of different things that we've done. One is, and this is more on the marketing side, we actually learned from kind of people who did a great job of like putting the word out there. Like I think, for example, Gong does this really well for sales teams. And I think they do that because they're hanging out where their audience hangs out, and they write content that describes their audience or their persona's life. And so what we are trying to do is actually like, we write content that's really approachable. It speaks to people's pain, and we try to hang out where our people are. And like,
have you guys have you invested it? Like, do you have have you invested in a content, you're a pretty big org now, but have you invested in a content team? And was that something that you did purposefully, understanding that you were going to, wanting to build this category?
Oh yeah, totally. We have an amazing person leading that. Her name is Molly. And she's tremendous. And like in the very early days, we would just ask our customers, like Molly would ask, hey, like, what do you read? What kind of podcasts are you on? Where do you get ideas for new, like, where do you learn? What do you listen to? What do you care about? Right. And like, I talk to like a couple of dozen customers every week. So does Molly. So there's many people on our team. And so we learn what our customers care about. And we try to write on that and reflect on that, because I think category creation, it's like a community sport, right? It's not about Monte Carlo. It's about like this problem of data being wrong, data downtime. And it's about helping our customers solve that. Like, Monte Carlo is just helping create that, but it's not about us at all. It's about them. And so, yes, we spend a lot of time on that. And, we hold like small roundtables almost every other week to host data leaders for them to talk to each other about their problems. That has nothing to do with Monte Carlo at the company, but it's part of like category creation. It's part of helping people articulate their problems and bring them together.
Did you have any trouble? A lot of people or companies, they start to invest in things like that, or they start to invest in content, and then they go, well, I didn't see the $1 we put into that round table turn into $5 the next week. How, this stuff's a waste of time. We need to can you run more Google ads? How did you think, how did you think about that? And in your mind say like, no, you know what, this isn't about like what happened, first of all, maybe for you guys, $1 did turn into $5 the next week. I don't know. But how do you think about, investing in this and building the community, thinking that, okay, this is our bet that it's going to pay off over time?
I mean, first, look, I did see this happen at Gainsight. So like when I joined Gainsight, I'll give you an example. I think we held our first conference, and it was like 100 people, and like there wasn't any coffee, which is like the number one no in a conference. Like you need coffee. It's definitely like everything that could go wrong went wrong. And then like a couple years later, there was like, I don't know, 6,000 people in attendance. I think today there's like over 10,000 people attending. Like it's a huge, like it's a thing, customer. It's like this crazy movement. I mean, it's sort of obvious today, but seeing that, basically happen from nothing to like a full blown category was like, I was really fortunate to see that. And so, in sort of the early days of creating data observability, people will be like, data observa what? Like, I can't even pronounce that. Like, and English is my second language, so it's even worse. Like, I couldn't pronounce it. And, so in the early days, like, we didn't really use those terms. No one really understood that. Like, people understood the pain, but people definitely didn't understand how to try to solve that. Fast forward to today, like, I'll talk to someone, they're like, oh yeah, we like have budget for data observability for this year. And I'm like, wait, what?
That's cool.
And that's becoming the norm now. And so, I think there's like more and more signs along the way of like, okay, this is actually a thing and people care about it. And not only that, it's making an impact on their life. And so they're planning for it for next year too.
I think probably getting to see it work, with Gainsight, and then you believe that's like a human thing, right? That once we see something happen once, we think, we start to believe that we can do it. And I'm sure that was like a huge benefit to see that, not necessarily just for like, oh, this worked for them and this didn't, but just to see the movement happen and believe that you could create it too around this community, seeing that. I think that's a big opportunity generally, is like what functions that are critical to the business don't have these centers yet. They don't really have the, like you said, the trade show is for them or whatever. It's kind of a fragmented thing. Can you be that center and create a, product to solve for those problems? And I think there's still functions out there. As you niche further down, a friend of mine was doing partnership leaders, and that was successful. It was like, on a very small scale, not on a venture scale, but it worked. And, all right, we're running up on time here. So just a couple more. You already mentioned a couple books that you found inspiring or useful. Is there any, books or ideas that you have found particularly influential to either the way you build business or just, how you live your life?
Good question. Yeah, I mentioned Daring Greatly had a great impact on me. The Score Takes Care of Itself, which I really like. It talks about how like you should really obsess about the process at the end of the day, and if you obsess about that, the score takes care of itself. And I really believe in that. Like, do a great job every day, show up, and the score takes care of itself. I really like that. I'm reading a book now called Originals, actually, which speaks about, individuals. I'm just starting it, but like individuals who, were able to make progress by having original thinking, and what are the common patterns there. And some of that, what I quoted earlier, some of the ideas there I really like. I think some of the takeaways there are like original people, however you define them, are actually like just regular people like everyone. They're not more risk takers than anyone else. They don't it's not like they don't have fear of failure. They have all the emotions and rationals that everyone else has. They just make a conscious decision that like not trying is worse than trying and failing. And I really like that. So I'm literally just like on page 50. There's more to go, but so far I'm enjoying the book.
I think it's a better way to live too, because we all, as we get older, there's this push towards homogenization kind of, but then the people we all gravitate toward aren't the ones who just look, act, and behave like everyone else. They're the people who behave like themselves. And I think, we're seeing that in the enterprise too, like where before it was like everything had to be a certain kind of content and all buttoned up in a certain way. And now it's, we're seeing more personality come into the space, and that's sort of what's getting traction now.
Totally.
All right.
People buy from people.
Totally. That is something that people often forget. All right. So we're up on time here. So to wrap us up, if people want to learn more about Monte Carlo, follow you. Anything else you want to, shoot people towards, where should we send them?
Either my LinkedIn or my email, bar@montecarlodata.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Brendan. It's been awesome.